I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in this video, we're going to help you get the absolute maximum value for your legendary commander sculptures in Rise of Kingdoms. Whether you are spending big or you are totally free to play, we're going to guide you in which commanders are going to give you the absolute best bang for your buck, and we're going to pull on our experience spending literally over millions of gems on commanders and having won about half a dozen Mighty Governor events to get those legendary commander sculptures to give you the absolute best advice possible. If you were looking for the most comprehensive guide on the exact sequence of legendaries to invest in Rise of Kingdoms, you've come to the right place. Let's get this started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be very precise about the exact commanders we would recommend that you invest in, because that has to be one of the most common questions that we are asked in the hundreds of hours that we have live streamed Rise of Kingdoms. So let's talk about that specific order. Here's what the agenda is going to be today. First and foremost, we're going to talk about the different ways that you obtain legendaries and how that impacts the way you might think about investing in them, and this is extremely important and undervalued. The next thing we're going to talk about is the different ways you can invest in legendary commanders, the skill sequences that you would work on, and how that varies by commander. The next topic we're going to talk about is getting right into then the specific guidance that we would recommend, starting with very low spend to free-to-play players, advancing then to moderate to heavy spenders, and then lastly, a Megalodon category. All of this is in the description with timestamps, so you can skip ahead to whatever you want, but I would encourage you to listen to the first parts because it will very substantially influence our recommendations in the later parts of the video. If you like Rise of Kingdoms guides that help you get value and smash your enemies, consider subscribing for daily Rise of Kingdoms content. We make guides like this every single day, and we are a sponsored creator for Rise of Kingdoms. Let's get into our first topic, which is how the heck do you unlock these commanders anyways, and why does that influence which ones you would go invest in? The way that you unlock a legendary commander profoundly shapes the way that you would think about investing in them, because just because a commander is the very best does not mean that they are the easiest to invest in or the best for you. So let's talk about some of the different ways that you unlock these legendary commanders and how that influences the way we think about investing in them. And I want to start by showing commanders that show up in the Wheel of Fortune. Commanders that show up in the Wheel of Fortune will have an event that typically spawns 3 times over the duration for which that commander will be in the Wheel of Fortune. In each round of Wheel of Fortune, you can get approximately 100 of the commander's sculptures if you're max spinning that wheel. And the thing that's nice about that, if you are a big spender in the game, is that you could actually get these commanders to at least 300 of the 700 sculptures you're going to need by just spinning the wheel. That is going to profoundly reduce the amount of universals you need to get these commanders to a place where you want to start using them. For that reason, the Wheel of Fortune commanders are among some of the best to be spending your universals on. Now, much trickier to obtain, but very powerful, is commanders that you can unlock from the Mighty Governor. An example of a Mighty Governor commander would be Constantine. Constantine will show up in a Mighty Governor cycle. There are 4 Mighty Governor cycles before that commander typically goes away and a new one appears in the Mighty Governor. We're not going to go in depth on how Mighty Governor works here, but very few people position themselves or are able to spend enough to win this event. What that means is that the Mighty Governor commanders are actually among the very most expensive to invest in Rise of Kingdoms, because you're going to have to use primarily universal commander sculptures to get these to an expertise, and that means that you're spending, every time one of these comes around, probably 500, 600 universals, and that is extremely expensive. For that reason, I often steer people away from maxing out commanders that come from the Mighty Governor. The next way that you unlock some of these legendary commanders that is very important to talk about is actually from good old gold keys. If I go into my tavern and we get a look at the commanders that are on the gold keys, every time you open up a gold key, you've got a chance to get some amount of these legendary commander sculptures. This is extremely significant because after you have maxed out a commander, any extra sculptures you get of them are basically 100% waste. So if you invest in some of these gold key commanders and you take them to an expertise level, the problem is that every time one of them subsequently shows up in a gold chest, they are wasted. I literally have, after having expertise Cao Cao, 500 of his sculptures. I got 300 Martel after I expertised him. I got 300 plus of El Cid after I expertised him. This is important because it means that these are commanders that if you invest in them, it's because you've already maxed out other commanders that you aren't going to be getting lots of sculptures of other ways. So commanders that come from Mighty Governor, and even better, our wheel events, are very safe to invest your universals in because there are very few ways that you could end up accidentally getting more of those sculptures and have them be wasted. In fact, I'm not aware of any way to really do that unless you're trying. So these gold key commanders, while powerful, are commanders that I generally recommend you do not spend universals on because once you've done that, you no longer get any value from getting them from gold keys. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I want you to think twice about it before you invest in them. Now, there is one other event called a Card King. It lets you pick from a selection of commanders that are available, and that is based on your kingdom's age as well. I don't know exactly when commanders become available from Card King, but what I do know is when commanders will be available in the Mighty Governor cycle and in the Wheel of Fortune. There's a graphic that somebody posted to my Discord. I'm going to put it up on the screen if I haven't already so that you can get a look at that. The link is in the description for my Discord. You don't have to join it now, but I would recommend you check that out at the end of the video for additional resources that may be helpful to you. Use this as a reference for when you think about when you're interested in the commander and when it will be available to your kingdom, because every kingdom is on a cycle based on its age. That dictates who's on the Mighty Governor, who's on the Wheel of Fortune, and who's on the Card King. Let's jump into our next topic, which is the way that you can actually skill up these commanders and how it influences our decisioning around which ones we invest in and the extent to which we invest. The way you invest skills onto a commander profoundly shapes the strategy you take toward investing in them. So we need to talk about some of the fundamentals that influences which of these commanders we think are good to invest in. The first thing we need to talk about as a fundamental is when, in fact, the skills unlock. New skills become available at each star level up to 4 stars. So after you've got the 2nd star, you'll have 2 skills. 3 stars, you have 3 skills. 4 stars, you have 4 skills available. Now, you can use the level of your commander and control the rate of star gain by just not applying stars to a commander in order to control where your skill points go rather than having them be randomly assigned across all skills that are not maxed at 5. This is extremely important. You've heard this notation most likely of a 5-1-1-1 or a 5-5-1-1. That is referring to the level of the skills on the commander. This influences profoundly which commanders you invest your universals in and how much you would invest in them. And it also influences, by the way, which commanders you might want to expertise versus a few that honestly you take them to 5-5-1-1 and you've actually obtained most of the value. So let's walk through a few of those because this will be really important. An example of a commander that is tricky to invest in and they come from gold keys is Cao Cao. Their first skill, very, very good. It is good for combat, but their second skill, all about damaging barbarians. Well, if you want every point, every skill you put onto a legendary commander to be impactful on all situations in which you're in combat, whether it's barbarians or players, then this is a commander that you want to max the first skill and then take to 4 stars immediately and hope that your other skills, as you apply them, land on the 3rd skill and 4th skill, which are going to be relevant if you're fighting players or if you're fighting barbarians. Perfect example of a commander you would take to 5, 1, 1, 1, and then apply more skills to get good value. For this reason, this is a commander I probably wouldn't recommend as one that you try to expertise, but there's more to that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. He is a great commander, just not one of your first. A really good commander, as an example of a 5-5-1-1, is Richard I. Now, I like to do Richard I as a 5-5-1-1 because the first skill is phenomenal. It is doing healing. It is reducing the damage of the enemy march and their march speed. The second skill, phenomenal, increases your counterattack damage that you deal and also reduces the damage you take by 15%, which is huge. Neither of these skills even cares about what type of troop you bring to the battlefield. So a 5-5-1-1 Richard is actually pretty plug and play with most marches, even if you don't take advantage of this third skill, which is related to infantry. Of course, there are plenty of infantry marches you'll find where you can take advantage of that. He is so good as a commander that you actually could use him as a 5-1-1-1. But the reason you want to control the rate of skill gain for a 5-5-1-1 is that not only is the second skill typically better than some of the other ones, but there is non-linear progression with this skill. What do I mean by that? To go from level 1 to level 2 of this second skill, I'm first gaining 2% damage taken reduction and 1% counterattack damage bonus. To go from 2 to 3, I'm getting 2% extra damage taken reduction and 1% counterattack damage bonus. Okay, but here's where things get interesting. The upgrade from the third to fourth skill and fourth to fifth skill, for each of those I'm gaining 3% damage taken reduction and also 2% extra counterattack damage bonus. So I'm getting much more in the last couple skills here, and it's much easier to guarantee I land on those if I max the first and second skill first to get even more bang for my buck with my legendary commander sculptures because, my friends, the number of legendary commander sculptures you're going to need is going to go up with every single investment you make. It's going to start at 10 sculptures a pop to skill this guy up, but then at the end, it's going to be 75, 75, 80, and 80 sculptures for your last 4 skill ups. It's astonishing. So it's much easier to just go in the beginning, guarantee you max the first 2 skills, then level them up. Now, this is an interesting case because this commander is also just really good as a 5-1-1-1. To give a really good example of another commander where I would insist that you max the second skill is Alexander the Great. Max the first skill, max the second skill. From there, you've got a lot of flexibility and you can star them up if you want to. But this second skill is just so massive in its effectiveness, you really want to max that before you proceed. I would not recommend you use this commander as a 5-1-1-1. Again, this is important because it's going to control and influence how much you invest in them. Now, the final designation that we should talk about is a 5-5-5-1 commander. That's right, maxing the first 3 skills on a commander. And a good case for this is Saladin. The first 3 skills he has are all very effective in combat, and the last skill is related to hitting cities. You almost don't even care about it. You really don't care about this so much for most players that you really want to max the first 3 skills if you can, so that those last investments that are so expensive, 75 sculptures, 80 sculptures, 80 sculptures, you don't have to do that to max these first 3 skills. You get all of the cheaper skill ups to all go to stuff you want over here. Then you star them up, then you level them up, then you use them. There's a perfect example of that. This is a commander where if you sort of mess this up and you do really want to use them, you have to sort of expertise them to fix it, which is the last thing that I wanted to talk about for this section of the video, which is that if you messed up the skills on a commander, for instance, somebody was telling me they had a 3-5-5-3 Richard I, and it's like, man, you really wished you'd max this first skill. For someone in that position, I insist that they, at that point, try to expertise them to fix that first skill. And even if they put 2 more skill ups on it, and then it's 5-5-5-3, 3 and it landed all perfectly on the first skill, at that point you're only 180 sculptures away. I insist that you then expertise it to get the benefit of this last expertise skill, which is very powerful. And I think this goes without saying if you're this far into the video, but the expertise skill becomes available after you've maxed all the other skills on the commander. For a legendary, that's very expensive. So it's clear to see now that understanding the sequence for investing in a legendary influences if and when you would invest in them, because the amount of sculptures you have to commit to get really good value from the commander will differ based on the commander that you're investing in, and some of them I would even try to steer you away from. So an example of a commander that is very good, but I might even try to steer you away from, is a commander like Guan Yu. Now, this commander does so much damage, and I'm really loving using him in the open field. But a commander like this, if you're using universals, their second skill is really not useful to you most of the time for hitting garrisons. Like 99% of the time, you just don't care about this. Maybe even like 99.9% of the time you don't care. Like maybe only in Ark of Osiris you care about this. So it's just really heartbreaking to pick a commander like this and roll the dice, and you take them to 5, 1, 1, 1, and you just cross your fingers and hope that the skills don't land over here. It can end up being a very expensive proposition, and then you end up feeling like you have to expertise them to really correct for the skills landing in a place that is not optimal. So with all of that said, it's time to get into the part of the video that you're very eager to hear about, I'm sure. What is the exact sequence of legendaries that I would recommend that players invest in? Let's start with free to play. My goal for you as a free to play player is to get the absolute maximum value from your legendary commanders. This means they need to be usable in the most possible game modes, in the most flexible and efficient way possible for you to invest, so that you can get a lot of value from the very precious legendary commander sculptures that you will be getting. We will culminate with your being able to bring one really solid march in KVK Season 3 and Season 4, which is Light and Darkness, to the Ancient Ruins, where you literally can only have one march per player to fight, and you want it to be the best march possible. So we will even consider that as we look at which commanders you should invest in and give very precise advice. So let's get started by saying that the first legendary I want you to focus on, and even expertise, is going to be YSG. It's not a coincidence, he is on the screen. Isong is phenomenal for his expertise skill because he is going to do damage in a circular area. It is just so easy to hit other people and to do amazing things with this commander based on his circle AoE. Some of those amazing things include a game mode like Sunset Canyon, where you can position your Isong to hit 4 marches at a time. Game-changing. You can use Isong to hit barbarians when you're leveling them up, or even just when you're trying to get value, and any extra barbarians you hit, they will attack you, and they don't cost action points for you to hit. You got them for free from his AoE. Other commanders can do that too, but he's just so good. The other thing that makes him so phenomenal and so versatile is that this skill over here, the second one, is the only one that cares about archers, and it cares about archers only a little. You still get the rage gen, even if you're not bringing archers. So Isong is phenomenally versatile because you can use him even in an infantry march, even in a cavalry march. And we do that ourselves. So this is a phenomenal commander that, in addition to all of that, if I haven't sold you yet, is really good to put on your wall. They're also a garrison commander. I mean, they slice, they dice, they literally do it all. Invest in this commander first with your universal legendary commander sculptures. You saw from my diagram that I shared earlier that they only become available 90 days into your kingdom's age, approximately, depending on exactly when your kingdom started and what day of the week it was. So investing in this commander will be a choice that requires patience, but is something that will pay off in spades. Now from here, this is going to take a while as a project to expertise a legendary. In my restart account, it took me less than 200 days to go and do. I did spend on that account, but I don't do any Ark of Osiris, which is a really good source for legendaries. That's a topic for another day, but it's achievable in about 200 days. I would recommend that as a project. The next project that you can consider, and the march I want you to build towards for that one march you can bring in Light and Darkness KVK Season 3, is going to be either Richard I, Alexander the Great, or in my perfect world, I would encourage you to do Constantine. Now let's start with why I really like Constantine. Constantine is phenomenal as a 5/5 1/1 commander. That means you can max the first 2 skills and then level them up, and I use them today. They are so good in a game mode like Canyon. Because of the first skill doing a 10% damage reduction, it is transformative for the quality of your Canyon team, because this is an AoE effect, influencing potentially all of your marches in Canyon as a game mode. For this reason, they're also so good in the open field, and you can use an E-Song as a secondary to your Constantine, leveraging the fact that the support tree generates huge amounts of rage to machine gun out your AoE from E-Song with a bunch of very protective infantry, and you can do that in a way that I think is very sustainable in the open field. You're also doing effects here as a free-to-play player that aren't going to be influenced by your own power level, which is important. Your technology is going to hugely influence the amount of damage you deal. And if you're running around with T4 troops, using active skills that don't care about your technology levels are very powerful, because you get the maximum effectiveness from a skill like this without even being max tech. Now, I also like Constantine because he is a garrison commander. If you were going to expertise 2 commanders, Constantine E-Song will be pretty solid. Your wall at that point would be Constantine primary, E-Song secondary. Amazing. But even if you don't expertise Constantine or take him up to level 60, and you just keep him at level 40, as I have done, he's going to be phenomenal as a secondary commander on the battlefield, which is just one of the many reasons why I love him as a commander. If you just have E-Song and you're not going to put him on your wall, I think that Sun Tzu primary, E-Song secondary is a great wall configuration. More on that in a video we've got linked in the description in our Ultimate Guides playlist. Now, I recommend Constantine for a free-to-play player because I think that this defensive capability is really great, but the other route you can go that's just so powerful is to either choose Alexander the Great or Richard I. Now, I want to show you Alexander the Great, who I would recommend, as I said earlier, you do as a 5/5-1/1. Alexander the Great is going to do a shielding effect, which is very powerful for your allies, and the utility of debuffing healing. There's a 10% chance on normal attack to reduce the healing effectiveness of the target by 30% is really powerful as an effect. This commander is also very good to expertise because they are going to do an AoE debuff that is going to hit 3 targets and increase the damage they take by 30%. This also not influenced by your technology levels. Alexander the Great has a lot of march speed, so he's far more mobile than Constantine will be on the battlefield. While Constantine you could use as a garrison, Alexander the Great is good as a rally commander. This is a commander that you're really not going to be rallying stuff as a free-to-play player, most likely. It's going to be your high VIP level players that should be focused on that activity. And that is also true of garrisoning. I do really like the Constantine, though, for defending your city. All of that said, Alexander the Great is a really phenomenal choice. I would recommend him very, very highly as well. The last choice that you could go with is the Richard I. You can use him as a 5/1/1/1, which is why he's a commander you don't actually have to expertise to get a lot of value. And because of that, I would highly consider keeping him as a 5/1/1/1 or a 5/5/1/1 if you can be even more patient to use on the battlefield. He is going to get a lot of the value from the first 2 skills. He is also very tanky and transformative in that way. He doesn't have a rage engine, and he is still okay for defending your city, but I do worry a little bit about healing effects for city defense because you're going to heal lots of troops and then they're going to get damaged again, and there's a higher chance your hospital fills up and you have more severely wounded troops out of the exchange. He is a commander that is just really good in a game mode like Ark of Osiris and also in Canyon, less good for defending your city. So me personally, I would recommend that the route you take is Esong and then either Constantine or Alex. I'll say that Constantine is going to be a lot harder to obtain, and that is because Constantine is a mighty governor commander. So it may just be more practical for you to go with the Alexander the Great, even though I just do feel like Constantine, the second I did this on my main account, I just got so much value in Canyon. It was just astonishing. I wish I could expertise him, but I'm saving my sculptures for other projects. Alexander the Great is going to be a lot easier to get because he's on the wheel. Those are the commanders I would focus on. Ignore the rest. Let me talk about why, as a free-to-play, there's a lot of commanders you might say, well, but wait, but Chisgule, I really want, and just let me try to steer you away. Steer away from Cao Cao. He's good at hitting barbs. You do need to hit a lot of barbs. Get him from gold keys, 5111. Keep getting him from gold keys. Enjoy that. Over time, you'll get more value with him as he grows. A commander like Minamoto, I'm going to assume you're not buying your way into as a free-to-play player. You could take him to 5511. You do have to spend money to do that. If you're a low spender, it's great value. I've even done that on my farm account and also on my restart account. He's solid as a 5511. A commander I will steer you away from, but is very good, is Charles Martel. If you were going to use them as a 5511, try to do that. Do not take them to 5111. Max the first two skills. Try to do it with gold keys. If you're really getting impatient with it, you can use your universals, but I just do feel like those other projects, like a Richard I, is a better project. Continuing on to Saladin, I do love the utility you would get from a 555-1 Saladin, but it's just so many sculptures. I feel like you're better off at this point having multiple 5511 commanders than having a single 5551 commander. Yes, that's how many more sculptures it is. It's astonishing. Khan is a glass cannon. That is not a role a free-to-play player should try to fulfill. He's an amazing rage engine. I love this guy. He's fun. But I'm telling you, fun is not necessarily going to be best and most optimal for that one march you're going to have for going to the Light and Darkness KVK area to battle. Ethelfled, really good. You're going to work on her separately. Not relevant for this guide because she doesn't take universals. Edward and also Tamaris, way too narrow in their utility. Do not invest in them. They're good commanders, but I use certainly Edward the least, and I have not even expertise to Tamaris, even though I won a Mighty Governor with her rip. Attila and Takeda, very solid. At this point, you're so far into the game, you can start to make your own choices. In my opinion, a bit too narrow in their focus, but by the time that Attila, Takeda, Guan, these other folks are out, you're going to be able to make a lot of your own choices if you want to invest in them. Freddy and Caesar, good for hitting cities and in gold keys. Definitely max the first two skills if you're going to use them, but I do not think that's what a free-to-play player should be doing. El Cid is another commander. Absolutely take them to 5511 before proceeding. That means you get the most of their sort of generic effectiveness. None of the first two skills is concerned with archers, which is the unit this commander cares about. So you do get a lot of the value and a lot of flexibility with this commander as a 5511. They're not as good in Canyon because you really want AoE in Canyon. So you can do El Cid, but I would steer you away from it. Their utility is sort of constrained to open field, and you need more than that as a free-to-play player. Mehmed is for sitting cities. Don't do it. The Gathering Commanders don't do. Even Wu Zetian, way too narrow in her focus. Great commander. Way too narrow in her focus. If you got her from a KVK, all she can do is garrison. And as a free-to-play, I just worry if you are investing in commanders that are too narrow. For the same reason, I don't think you should do Charlemagne. And again, by the time you've got like a Leonidas and a Ramses available, you can kind of make some of your own choices if you wanted to invest in them. I think Ramses is going to be really good, but he gets really nuts only with his expertise skill. I do think Leonidas is pretty solid, in fact, extremely solid for open field fighting. And he is a commander you could 5/5, 1/1. However, I feel like, again, you would prefer to have commanders that are a good bit more versatile. And I feel like open field fighting is not exactly your jam. Now, speaking of that open field jam, you want to have, optimally, by the time you hit KVK Season 3, Light and Darkness, where you can only bring one march to the Altar of Darkness to contest it. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry. You don't need to know now. But if you're bringing one march, I would love for you to have either an expertise Richard I, and you hide Esong behind it, so you do lots of AoE damage, and people try to avoid hitting you because you have Richard I. Or, I think even better, is going to be a Constantine expertise with a Esong secondary, lots of AoE, lots of buffing, very powerful even as a free-to-play. Or, alternatively, an Alexander the Great and an Esong. Classic combo. There was a time where Alex Esong Expertise was one of the literal best marches in the open field. You're going to slay it with this healing debuff in the Light and Darkness area. You're going to be a little squishy with an Esong Alexander the Great, but that is going to be a phenomenal combo to just run around, do a lot of damage, and be highly disruptive and supportive. One final consideration for you as a free-to-play player is that, unlike other tiers of spenders, you are less concerned about how you're unlocking them exactly, dictating your investment in that commander, because you're using almost entirely universals, regardless of which commander you choose. So you're not going to be steered away from a Mighty Governor commander like a spender might actually be steered away from it. And we'll explain that in just a moment. But just know that your reach includes really any commander because you're using primarily universals, and for you, that's totally A-okay. Those are my recommendations for a free-to-play player. I've tried to reduce as much of the decisioning out of it as possible so you can just go in and invest if you want to, while also giving you enough of the logic behind those decisions so that you too can make your own choice. And by the way, for all three of those marches that I recommended, where Esong is the secondary, you're going to bring infantry. You're going to bring infantry, Esong secondary. Beautiful. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what a moderate spender to high spender should consider as their legendary priority. Okay, let's talk about how these recommendations change for a mid spender. And this is very different. If you are spinning wheels to 100 every time they show up, or even max spinning a wheel, this profoundly shifts how you prioritize where you invest your legendary commander sculptures. And here is why. When you're getting lots of value, spinning the wheel and doing those activities, to go and expertise a commander that you've already spun the wheel for a whole bunch, like this Guan Yu, I've used almost no universals, and they're a 5/3/4/5. It takes me very little to go and expertise them. Now, we had, I think, 4 wheels of Guan Yu, which is a little bit of an unusual situation, but it's only going to take me like 200-ish sculptures to finish this commander and get the expertise skill. This is very different and is much easier to do when you're already spending in this way than looking at something like a Mighty Governor commander. If I wanted to do Leonidas, who's a Mighty Governor commander for which I won none of the Mighty Governor cycles, I'm going to have to spend almost 700 sculptures to do this project. That is extremely expensive. So when you think about where you're investing, you're actually very much married to the wheel commanders if you are a value hunting player. And as a mid spender, you kind of need to be. Even spending $2,000 a month with that's my rate of spend in Rise of Kingdoms. And for me, that's a decision oriented around being able to create better content. And I do really love the game. But because you're getting so many sculptures already from the wheel, to not just tip those commanders over to their expertise is, I think, a not optimal decision. So for you as a mid-tier spender, here is the sequence that I would recommend for you as you expertise commanders in Rise of Kingdoms. The first commander you're going to work on is Richard I. You're going to take him to 5/5/1/1 from the Richard I wheels, but stop there. Use your universals instead on Esong. That's going to be the first commander that you expertise. This, of course, is much like what we did as a free-to-play player, except you got the Richard I to a 5/5/1/1 first. From here, you're going to double down on those wheel commanders and still avoid gold key commanders, which means you're going to be considering commanders like Khan to go in expertise with your universals, but ignore, most likely, Saladin. You're going to go and invest in a commander like Alexander the Great, but most likely ignore a commander who comes in the Mighty Governor at the same time, which is going to be Constantine, which is something that I myself have done. Even if you can pull down one Mighty Governor win for a commander, you still are going to need like 500 more sculptures, which is a lot more than the probably 400 you'll need for a wheel commander where you've max spun the wheel. Now, you can shift gears and go for one of these Mighty Governor commanders, even without a Mighty Governor win, but just know that it's going to be pretty expensive as a project. For a time, you're going to need to invest less in your commanders that come from the wheel with your universals. A really good time to do that is when Edward hits the wheel. This is a commander that, you know, he is good for rallying for a time, but like, I just don't feel like I get as much value from him as I do other commanders like Alexander the Great. And between him and having an expertise Constantine, gosh darn it, I really wish I had the Constantine. I really wish I had the Constantine. So even though that would have been a project that cost me 100 plus more extra universals to have done over the Edward after max spinning the wheel, I really wish I had gone that route. So again, I would encourage you to really focus on setting your heart on those commanders that show up in the wheel if you're spinning them a lot anyways, because that will make it so much easier and leverage your universals really efficiently. And to skip Edward in favor of potentially, and skip Tamaris and potentially do someone like Constantine, where I feel like you would just get so much more value with your universal legendary commander sculptures. Just like with a free-to-play player, I'm steering you away from the gold key commanders. You can go in on a few of them as you see fit. For instance, launching barb rallies, you might consider like, hey, I'm going to go in on a Cao Cao. You could do that. You could do that. You could go in on a Martel and say like, hey, I really am passionate about Garrison, and having the 20% march speed for infantry is something I really care about on the expertise. You could go in on a project like this, but then your gold keys are not going to be giving you value over time. I just would really steer you away from that. You can do it. I think it's not optimal. Some of these commanders like Cao Cao and Martel, if you're a spender, you can get them from the daily special offer. Again, topic for a separate video, but I would encourage you to get those other ways than to invest boatloads of universals. And only after they get to the point where it's like, it's only like 200 more sculptures, do you consider tipping them over to an expertise skill with universals. Let's shift gears now and talk about how a mega spender approaches their legendary commanders, which like slash popcorn if you're not in this category, which includes me not in this category, but it is fun to think about how that tiny part of the world lives, thinks, and invests. Let's talk about it. Let's get ready to gem. We're going to spend a boatload of gems if you're a crazy, mega, insane spender buying the, Living Legends bundle every single day and you're going 100% ham. Here's what you're going to do, since you're going to get a boatload of Mighty Governor wins, and as the mega spender, you've got to sculpt responsibly over here. You got to use those sculptures in a way that truly most benefits the kingdom. Here's how you do it. You're going to work on your Richard I first, expertise him. You're then going to work on your Esong, expertise him. Along the way, you have acquired a lot of Caesar sculptures because you most likely won 2 to 3 Mighty Governor events with him. Tip him over to expertise because you're already on the doorstep of that. And as you make your way into KVK Season 1, I would like for you optimally to then tip over either El Cid or Frederick I so that you can run an Esong Cid rally or even a Freddy Esong rally. Those will be really phenomenal in KVK Season 1. From there, you've accumulated so much momentum that you're probably off the races and don't really need me to tell you where to go and invest. But I'll say that you should be buying the daily bundle that has Cao Cao. At some point, you'll open so many gold keys and you'll only be a couple hundred sculpts away from the expertise that you tip him over. After you've done that, Charles Martel will be available in the daily bundle. Buy a bunch of those and then tip over your Charles Martel. And then after that, if you haven't already done your El Cid, you're going to get a bunch of those in the daily bundle and he'll tip over. What I'll caution you about with El Cid is that he is going to show up in a later Mighty Governor cycle. I think right before you end up getting Saladin. Refer to the chart we shared earlier in this video if you're looking for more information on exactly when that comes in. So just be careful about going in on El Cid before you've actually had his Mighty Governor cycle. In fact, for that reason, I might even steer you away from it until you've won as many of those as you wanted to win. Then you go and you do your El Cid. But man, in KVK1, Esong's Cid is good. It's real good. I think you could get around that with a Freddy Cid. Both of them are in gold keys anyways. So I actually think I am going to nudge you away from Cid and toward the Freddy, because that Freddy is going to be good for you for hitting cities and going to be really good with that E-Song. From there, of course, you're investing in lots of things. Tamaris and Edward are on the table for you because they're a phenomenal rally pair. Later down the road, you could go and invest in Mehmed. I'm going to try to steer you away from that, although I know you're going to be really inclined to just go max this guy out at first opportunity. But you're going to have other commanders you can use to rally cities, optimally like a Freddy, for instance. And that tides you over until you're just so hungry for it that you go do this guy anyways, because he is going to be your best option for hitting a city. Although, if you can wait until after KVK Season 1, you're going to get a bunch of this guy, and if you've won your KVK, and this guy you can invest your sculptures in. He is good for rallying cities if that's what you're doing and you care about, and you're the mega spender, right? He doesn't come from gold keys, so you can still get value on Mehmed from gold keys for a little bit longer until finally you're like, all right, I got to go invest in something else, and you can do that Mehmed project. So again, to summarize that, you're going to start with your Richard, then you're going to go all in on your E-Song. You're going to be buying the chests to get your Cao Cao along the way and really close. Once you're in striking distance, you do it, and you kind of keep buying those chests. You're going to probably do Freddy pretty early on after you've done Caesar, who you've won Mighty Governor with that a bunch to first be like 100 or 200 sculpts away from expertising it. Then you're Freddy. And you're like really cooking with Cass into KVK Season 1 with like a Freddy E-Song. Oh, baby, that is going to be the business. And if you've done your Richard and your E-Song, you have those in KVK 1. But again, this is like megalodon territory. But that's probably what I would do if I had infinite money. Man, let me tell you, what would I do? This is like this is the approach I would take if I like won a super mega lottery and I was like, flip the table. I don't know what I would really do there though. Like I should just donate to a charity at that point rather than make a fourth account in Rise of Kingdoms and start over. That makes no sense. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a favor, drop a like on the video. It costs you nothing but helps me a ton. And consider subscribing. We release daily videos that are guides just like this, and they get better every time as we get better at making content. So there is a lot to look forward to when you subscribe. Until next time, my friends, you have fun smashing the kingdom. And let me know down below in the comments what you think of this order, what you might go and change, and who you're working on right now.